All right, we got another week. We're going to talk about the creative uses of AI and how we use AI in our creative work. Nathan, how do you
Yeah.
use your AI in creative work?
Well, I'm an engineer, so most of my creative work involves coding. So I
Yeah.
heavily use agents in my coding practices, but I also use it for learning. I think it's one of the things that we both do is using AI to learn things and to understand some of the things we don't understand yet. Brainstorming as well. That's a general high gist, and we jump into details. But how do you AI, Andrew?
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, I AI probably two ways. So coding or generating work product. I
Mm.
don't typically use it for generating like English word product outside of like code, I guess is technically English. I also use it for thought partnership.
Yes, 100%. I feel like a lot of people don't use that piece enough.
No.
It does tap into the curiosity element too. It's like
Yeah.
using it as a learning vehicle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll definitely break it down a little bit. Before we get really rolling, though, I think I sent you this article. I want to plug it because I think it was incredibly well written and really to the point. I have no idea who this person is, so like take it for what you will. I'll try to remember to plug it, but it's Alex Jacobs. It's Alex hyphen jacobs.com. And he wrote a article, a production framework for LLM feature evaluation. And he highlighted three essential points, which I basically have thought since starting deep work on generative AI 5, 6 years ago. And I
Mm.
would say that it's still very true today. Like, obviously, there's always caveats and nuances for everything, but the reality is, like, he nailed it. So, extracting structured data from unstructured inputs, content generation and summarization, categorization and classification. And then he went and actually and started to highlight the anti patterns, which is effectively what doesn't work. And maybe I will leave that as a teaser to go check out his piece because it was quite good. That being said, so yeah, I always human in the loop with AI. Like I don't trust it to
Yes.
do anything without my supervision or my input, but I do tend to turf a lot of stuff to it that frees up my time. And
Hmm.
I've been kind of on a little bit of a crusade lately where I'm trying to push back on this idea that AI is going to take everyone's job. The generative AI, which is what most people think of as AI, is non-deterministic, means we don't know what it's going to do at any given time, which means you can't predict its output. So it's good for anything that you don't care what the output is. Everybody who does work that creates value cares about what the output is and needs some sort of determined output, right? Here's the problem, we need a solution. Now, AI can help you get to that solution, but AI alone in itself is not going to actually solve those problems for you. You still need people to do that work. So, what I'm seeing is a lot of work is being freed up that is low value or not critical. And it's not saying that's not necessarily important, but like note taking and note
100%.
summarization is a great example. I'm on a meeting with a bunch of people. It takes a bunch of notes. It kind of highlights those key points. We can refer back to it. I'm still using my memory to remember everything that was important to me. I'm still making my own notes, but it's a nice little tome. Whereas before, you might have somebody who's like nominated to be the note taker, and it's not a very valuable thing. They can't participate other than like passive synthesization. So you either free up that person to participate in the meeting, or you don't need them at all. I think that's the simplest example of, is it going to replace the 5 people in the meeting to make a business determined solution and then write some software? No, not at all. I guess like I'll start with the thought partner stuff, because that's probably the least.
I mean,
Um,
to just tack on to like
yeah,
the transcription stuff, anything to text, I think is a valuable use case.
yeah,
I'll go super niche into my own personal use cases. Like I'll have images of like tables or
yeah.
something, and I personally keep notes in like a markdown style format. So I used to actually go and convert through OCR, like where there are,
Nice.
good engines, but sometimes they have problems and they don't format them into Markdown. So I sit there and I would take tables, OCR them, and then manually convert them into Markdown tables. Now you can just actually take an image, PDF, say, hey, convert this table in this image into a Markdown table,
Yeah.
and then you can copy and paste that to use wherever you use Markdown, which is almost everywhere. But in
Well,
general, the idea is like taking multimedia into text, which you can then work with however you want to.
yeah, and you get an actual much better vectorization when you use images as well. So one tip for people using AI is that instead of pasting the words into an LLM and asking it for something, taking a screenshot of in a picture and putting it
Mhm.
in and telling it to pull that information and interpret that information will actually typically provide better results. Not always, especially if it's really complex,
Yeah.
just because of the nature of vectorization of visuals versus text. And
Right.
for some reason, the visual OCR extraction produces better vector results than truncating words a lot of the time.
Hmm.
I don't know. Don't
Interesting.
at me. It's math.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it depends how
Interesting.
the models are built too, but if you, especially if you have a lot of dense information, and one way to like beat the context window sometimes is to also upload like visuals of stuff and ask it
Uh,
to interpret and make sure that interpretation is correct, because it can interpret it wrong. But that's kind of a little AI hack.
yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. OCR, by the way, is optical character recognition.
Yeah.
Before it's still used today, but it's the process of taking an image and then trying to extract letters or characters from the image and then transforming it into text.
So in the, I guess in my like work life, or like I don't really use AI for non-work stuff, but I'll use it as like ideation and thought partner. So I'll give it an idea that I'm thinking about, and I'll have it play the counterpoints. I'll have it do research to validate my hypothesis, provide me context on how it might not be a good hypothesis. I'm always looking to like understand how I can develop better ideas or better instructions, or how can I make this more easily understandable, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I generally don't have it draft like prose for me.
Mm.
I will almost always have it give me examples of how to improve. So if like I'm writing a really long email and I'm like, shit, this is really long,
Cut. Yeah.
I'll
Simplify. Cut
send
some
it to
stuff. Yeah.
an AI, and I'll say, I need, help me reduce the amount of text or make my points more clear. And sometimes it'll generate a whole new email, and I'll like copy and paste or take parts of it. But typically I'll try to limit its use to, if it's like, hey, you could put these in a bullet list, or, this bullet list is too long or something like that. And use it more as like a collaborative aid than an actual like work offload.
Yeah.
Because the AI style is there, so it erases my voice. It makes a bunch of assumptions that I typically don't want it to make. And then it has a really strong opinion about how like the written language is. That's just not how it is. Maybe it's like grammatically correct, but it's like nobody writes like this, right?
I write like that, but yeah, I get what you mean.
So you
And
maybe your AI.
I mean, I do want to make one point here because a lot of people I do talk to think AI is magic and they offload a lot of writing to it. And we talk about this on this cast quite a bit, but
Yeah.
technology as a tool, it affects you as much as you affect it. So if you're using it to do creative writing or writing your emails or creative thinking, you don't want to rely on it too much because it ends up being like crutch because you
Yeah.
sort of lose the ability to critical think or to write a certain way, right? So people started to see the effects of this when you were searching back in the day. You didn't have to formulate a proper question. It was just like keyword, X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
whatever, and that's it. And you do your search and hope that something comes up. You can still do that with LMs too. You don't even have to put in a proper sentence. Just a
Yeah.
bunch of keywords, and they'll try and figure out what you're
And
doing.
sometimes that's okay. If I'm looking for just a quick reference, that's great. But if you're
Yeah,
actually trying to do meaningful work, don't don't offload it to the LLM, because you're just going to
yeah,
get the probabilistic output of your work, and it's going to be less good.
yeah.
And it doesn't know that the meeting that Nathan and I just had, Nathan was really angry about using blue in the product or something, right? And we shouldn't use blue in the. So and that's one thing I think too with like how I use LLMs. I You have to give it way more information than you would a person, because they
Hmm.
don't assume anything. Like they do and they don't. And so for thought work, not so much, but when I'm actually trying to produce like code or using it to actually do like, yeah, I guess coding work, the more context you can give it, the better it is. And then how you ground it with the prompts that you give it is also much more matters much more than the more creative work. But yeah,
Yeah.
for like knowledge work or like thought work, like what are you doing?
Yes. So the I do want to piggyback since you were just talking about it, the thought partner stuff. I think an extension of that is like self-directed learning.
Yeah.
So it's there are lots of things that you don't know that you need to know, right? So that
Yeah.
bucket of unknown unknowns. I think LLMs, by the nature of just their verbosity, can sometimes trigger some insight that you sort of are trying to dance around, right? So one way is like concretely, for instance, as an example, I'm here in Puerto Rico, and the way that they work with the coordinate systems are not. There are many different types of coordinate systems out there for laying out lands. And I got this document that told me the coordinates of where this plot was that I was looking at, but I had no idea how to map that to like your traditional Google Maps. And I was trying to understand the coordinate system, and even in the earlier days of LLMs, I was able to go back and forth and then
Yeah.
realize which type of coordinate system it was actually using, and then translate that into a more comfortable coordinate system and working with for mapping. So something like that is I think a
And you could
perfect use
have
case.
Googled it, right? But it might have taken you a
Well,
long time. You might not have found it.
I didn't know what I needed to know. Like at that point,
Yeah.
I didn't know what coordinate systems were out there. I didn't know that was what I was looking for. I just said, hey, I have these numbers. I'm trying to figure out
Oh,
what
it was
these
just like
mean.
I don't even know. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. So, and the numbers aren't absolute. So they're all referential to a certain point. So it's like point zero zero and then 10 feet this way, 9 feet that way. Uh,
Oh, so they
even like,
have
yeah, you can't map it to a global coordinate system. So I
wow.
had no idea where the reference was. And then trying to figure out one, what coordinate system it was using, and then two, figuring out how to translate the absolute or the referential point that the document was giving me to like a world coordinate.
Yeah.
So, like using an LLM to ask it questions and try and figure out what you need to ask, I think is one of the prime use cases that I have for LLMs in the thought partnership space. So it's like I have, say, this technology and I'm trying to do this. How do they come together? Is there an opportunity for an overlap? And you don't take the word of the LLM, but it feeds you information and you say, okay, I don't know what that is. Let me
Yeah.
go look that up.
It's like
Right.
Wikipedia for information, right? You never
Absolutely.
trust Wikipedia one to one, but it's a great resource to get you some information about something you might not know a lot about as a starting point for additional
Right,
search or
100%.
additional, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. As a practical exercise, we were talking about OCR. Use an LLM to learn about OCR and just talk with it, and
Yeah.
you'll learn stuff. I guarantee you'll learn stuff.
And it's, on that, Ben, one thing I guess I didn't mention that I was thinking about now is that if you use a deep learning model, quote unquote, or a deep research model, it'll give you the
Yeah.
thinking of the model. I
Yeah.
find that almost sometimes more helpful than the
Yeah.
actual output because it'll talk about, I'll talk in quotes about what it's reasoning and as it defines a plan or as it's trying to figure out how to make assumptions on the nuance, I'll be like, oh, I thought what I communicated was a very clear point.
Something
It
different.
clearly
Absolutely.
doesn't think that it's a clear point. Part of that could be the model, part of that might be me, but it helps give me information on that where then I can go either refine that point or a lot of times I'll see it where I'll start to kind of hallucinate because I didn't give it enough structure to like understand what I'm really trying to get to. So then I'll continue use that to like reground it and kind of model
Yeah.
hack, I guess.
100%. I think that's one of the insider tips kind of thing
Yeah.
is that it's treading towards the idea of this. At least people who are in tech might have heard the term context engineering, where you're trying to make sure that the information that the LM is working with is either grounded towards what you're trying to understand or directed towards what you want it to do.
Yeah.
So one of the ways you would do is by prompting, telling it certain things, and you'd mentioned telling it with more verbosity than you normally would.
Yep.
I think there is definitely an art to this context
Yeah.
engineering piece because there's this concept of context rot, where sometimes if you give it too much information, it will
Yeah.
start pulling things from all over the place.
No, it's a
And
good
so,
point. Too much specificity is not necessarily a good thing for
right,
LLMs.
exactly. So it's something you don't really. It's one of those experiences where you'll understand it better when you see it in practice. It's very hard to describe to someone
And
trying to work with
and
it
too much
directly.
specificity, a lot of the like people that I hear that say AI doesn't work are people who are very deep in a field and they'll give it some crazy
The ask
nuance.
is way too high. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just not going to get a good answer. But I mean, if you polled 100 people on the street, you're probably going to get 0 out of 100 people giving you a good answer too. Good job, you got a gotcha. But the reality is like that it's not, AI is again not going to replace you, but it can help you in your work to get
Mhm.
you better. So you can give it your notes and say, generate a slide deck of these. And it's probably faster than starting with a blank slide deck and adding in a bunch of information or heavily modifying a new slide deck that, you've used a year ago or something like that. Maybe not. Sometimes you get total garbage, but it usually takes a few seconds. And I would say 8 out of 10 times I end up using at least a couple slides, or I'll be the other thing again with like presenting information is like, oh, that's an interesting take I hadn't considered.
Yeah.
And maybe I use it, maybe I don't. Maybe it helps inform the way, because again, it's making assumptions about what I'm communicating, and I can kind of use it as a thought partner to see how people might interpret it or maybe make something more clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Anything else like on I don't really use it to like email. Like I said, I'll use it to kind of help
Mhm.
critique spell check and grammar check. I'll use it for. My grammar is really good. My spelling's terrible. Spell check in general is just awful. I don't understand why it's so bad, but
Mhm.
AI spell check's not too bad.
I'm not sure if this counts because it tries on a few different things, but I do get it to but in a roundabout way. So I'm practicing Spanish. I'm here in Puerto Rico. So I actually have a quote unquote customized tutor
Oh,
where I say, hey, I'm writing this email. It's in Spanish. Correct my grammar or check whether this is actually sounds natural.
sure.
And I have a system prompt that says teach your teacher. So don't just correct it,
Right.
explain why. And
Yes.
then yeah, here are some differences in say Puerto Rican Spanish is different than Latin American Spanish is different than Spain Spanish.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I use it for is if I'm writing something like a text or an email before I send it, I'll
Yep.
actually run it through an LLM. Not all the times, only when I'm like 100% sure that I've made some kind of error somewhere.
Yeah, and you
So
you nailed a good topic of like system prompts and system prompt tips.
yeah,
And for the model, a system prompt, it tends to be a higher level prompt to instruct the model or ground the model in a specific way. You can also do this if you don't have a system prompt in the
in the
system or the
prompt itself.
interface that you're
Yeah.
using. You just put it in the first prompt and say whatever you want.
Yeah.
I would recommend any sort of like writing or prose you're doing to say, I'm going to give you a bunch of words, an email, give it some kind of grounding, term paper. I want you to go through as a critic, an employee, a coworker, whatever you're trying to get feedback on, or maybe all three, and say, I want you to provide me specific items to improve and not
Mhm.
to rewrite it,
Yeah.
because you'll learn better, and it'll help you understand a point of view about your writing. It might not be a good one, right? You might have written it perfectly and AI just full it fails. That's possible. Realistically, it's probably going to help you. And so I'll have it oftentimes. My like system prompt level stuff will be don't make assumptions or something along those
Mhm.
lines. And then I'll say, don't make any assumptions. Ask me clarifying questions instead. And then I usually limit it to like, ask me 3 to 5 clarifying questions. Depends how nuanced and complicated. Sometimes I'll give it like really big ideas and just kind of see how it goes. Most of the time I'm giving it like a pretty refined
Yeah.
thing, or I'll give it a really big idea, it clearly misses it, and then I'll work with it to kind of chunk it out into
Yep.
more specific things through the chat conversation to narrow the context. But don't make improvements. Ask me clarifying questions is super helpful. One, again, because you get to learn a little bit about perspective. And two, sometimes it's much better.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And then usually I'll have a
the
prompt.
performance is better. Ask me
Yeah.
clarifying questions, or don't make assumptions, or explain your reasoning if you're not using, or if you're not looking at the reasoning, or forcing it to explain the reasoning. It doesn't always match the reasoning that it actually makes when it's trying to make its inference.
Yeah.
But those are always there are lots of good ones out there. People have shared them, but it's amazing to see the difference in the performance of the output you see when you have one of those key phrases in there. Right. The one thing I did want to call it is mention a plan. This specifically, I think, is more geared towards coding, but Typically, if you
Or
plan with the
anything
LLM first,
procedural.
anything where you're expecting it to follow a workflow, tell it to generate the plan first. One, you catch it and fix any errors before it actually goes and eats through thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of tokens. But you also have a much higher chance of it actually doing what you want to do if you do everything in the planning step before,
Yep.
or the planning phase before you actually go on and do it. And then one of the other pieces is, if you have a long workflow with respect to keeping the human in the loop, tell it to find spots that are good places to pause for you to review. So if you have like a
Yeah.
long chain of workflows, say like, hey, find like a phase one, phase two, phase three implementation.
Yep.
And then once you get to phase one, let's pause so you can make
Yep.
corrections,
And
keep it
focus.
tight. Yeah, exactly. And then once that's done, move on to the next phase, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And if you use that kind of an approach, I then find you don't lose the full context of the whole thing. So if it is a really big, long, complicated thing, give it the big, long, really complicated thing, have it make a plan, but then say, oh yeah, that's like 15 steps. Let's focus on step 1 through 4 first. I really want to get that down, work with it, refine it. And then you either start to see the context erode and the context decay, and then you take steps 1 through 4, paste them in the plan, put it in a new window, and say, hey, here's a plan. I want to work on 5 through 7 now. Help me with that. And oh, sure, I'll be more than happy to help. This is a really excellent plan. How could any human have ever come up with this?
Exactly. Right, 100%. We can go deep into coding specifically, because I'm an engineer and one of my primary streams is coding, but I can go a full episode and a half if we wanted to go deep into coding.
Maybe we should, because there's like, we've talked offline about like Gemini CLI, Jules, Claude Code. Claude Code just
100%.
released a web thing. And maybe that would be good. Maybe we should just do an episode on like how we code, because I also code with AI. And I definitely do it differently than most people. I don't use it in a code editor. Spoiler alert.
I see that every time you send me stuff that the AI does. I'm like, oh God, I see the Gemini chat. I'm like, what are you doing, Andrew? What are you doing?
I have my methods and my reasons.
But yeah, it's evolving really, really fast. And I think even with a lot of my engineering friends, I see a wide range of how people are using it. Like there's CLI based, there's in your IDE, there's like the web interface. There's also like swarming code swarms and hive minds now that I'm starting to use, which is crazy stuff, but it goes super deep, probably more than anyone would ever really realistically need to go down. But it's very interesting stuff. It's very fun. It's fun to see the high level concepts like context refinement being applied in these wide scale applications of, say, a context or a coding swarm.
Yeah. Let's save that for next time and use that as a teaser. Just tune in next week.
That would be fun.
Talk about coding swarms.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited.
It's been fun.
Cool. Same. Yeah. Take care.
You can find us at 38.com. It's like the word create, but with a 3 instead of the C. As always, we encourage you to listen, watch, do. We'll see you next time. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/38 or at ko-fi.com/38. Thanks for listening.